I just need to, because there'd have been folks in the waiting room and thing already. Right, yes. Jennifer Nathan. Chancellor, 7 of 9. Whoever that is. First time I'm seeing that name. All right, so we have persons already in the live. So, Dr. Browne, I'm going to jump straight into it because it's likely to be a long night for me, and I know that you have pressing matters that you have to deal with. So, good evening, and thank you very much for agreeing to this interview with me. There is a lot going on.
Good evening to you. I see you're catching your breath.
Yeah.
It's great to be back on your program.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have a very engaged audience, comprising many people who are very serious about Trinidad and Tobago.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to share such a disposition, so I'm looking forward to our conversation. And yes, we do have some serious matters to examine and analyze.
So interestingly enough, the last time you were here, because I was reminding myself, when was the last time we chatted on this program? And it was during COVID. So a whole 5 years ago, around maybe a little after this time. No, not 2020. When we got the vaccines, because that's when we had the conversation.
Right.
Because we were discussing the importance of small acts of foreign policy and how they go a long way. Because we were talking about how the little gift of masks to China, even though they make masks, how it went a long way in them making the decisions to give us vaccines. And now here we are once again looking at how small acts of diplomacy or not diplomacy can go a long way. So you have functioned as an ambassador to Brazil. You have also functioned as our Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. When you heard the Prime Minister's statement on Thursday evening last, what were your initial thoughts and reactions?
Well, I was very surprised, frankly, because I have been receiving calls during the day on Thursday from the media asking me for comments on what was transpiring. There had been some output in Venezuela and some surprising allegations and assertions being made. And as a responsible member of a responsible opposition, I made the decision to pause because I would not have been in possession of as many facts as I would appreciate before issuing any statement. And I said it is very important that the Prime Minister will speak on this matter and present the position of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. She is likely to update us on actions that have been taken as responsible administration and leadership of the country. And then I might be in a position to gauge and to give some kind of evaluation of those actions. I was very surprised when I heard just a media conference which focused on rhetoric, not on easing or reducing tension, not on providing clarity, there seemed to have been no effort made up to then and subsequent to then to bring clarity to the circumstances, all of which would have been the prudent action required. No engagement, no diplomacy, no dialogue, no meetings with counterparts in Venezuela. Just megaphone engagement, which really is the opposite of the type of diplomacy that one would demand, expect, and require in these circumstances. When you share a large border with a neighboring state, issues will arise from time to time, and that has been the reality throughout our history and the history of all countries in our region. I would remind you, we had a bit of a storm in a teacup in my early days as Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs with the FSO Nabarima issue.
Right, I do
remember that. Some of our friends like Gary Aboud and others, with their own sovereign individual position, made heavy weather of this challenge in the Gulf of Paria, and it was going to destroy the Caroni swamp. And that, again, there were some actions taken in front of the public gaze, Rhoda, and there were actions, many, taken outside of the public gaze to work with the neighboring government in Venezuela to achieve visit of the relevant experts, which occurred. They landed on the vessel, did inspections, did videography, drew some samples, and had with engagement. That was with the kind assistance of our then Minister of Energy, Franklin Cant, the late Franklin Cant.
Mhm.
And I found myself as a fairly new Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, being in that space, working with counterparts in Venezuela who were not always reacting with the speed we would have wanted because there was intense media pressure and public pressure in Trinidad and Tobago for answers. The ship is sinking, oil is leaking, people, all sorts of allegations. But again, prudent diplomacy, and it wasn't just me, it's not a one-man show, but with our team in Caracas, with the Venezuelan team in Port of Spain, and working through the crisis in a systematic way, we were able to bring it to an amicable resolution with clarity and emerge without any permanent scars on a relationship that must be important to Trinidad and Tobago at all times.
So, based on what I've seen in news channels, it appears that President Maduro, at some ceremony early on last week, would have made statements about persons crossing into Venezuela from Trinidad. And I think one member of the group is a Trinidadian. And
well, let's pause right there because I want us to be crystal clear.
Sure.
I have worked hard. The government has not presented a clear timeline or sequence of these events. But I've worked very hard to try to piece this together. What happened is President Maduro himself made certain statements on Tuesday, June the 3rd. That's the first we heard of this, claiming that a group of individuals from overseas, he specified Colombian and other nationalities, he did not say Trinidad and Tobago, had entered or attempted to enter Venezuela and were detained by Venezuelan authorities. He did say that they had crossed or attempted to cross the border from Trinidad and Tobago. So all at that point that we would have been aware of based on statements made in Venezuela is that a foreign group, including Colombia, had apparently used Trinidad and Tobago as a staging point to enter Venezuela, according to the Venezuelan authorities. That was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Minister Stern, Wayne Stern, from the media reports, made certain statements refuting and saying that there is no evidence to support this claim that a group left Trinidad and Tobago and entered Venezuela. And there was talk about the radars, a little bit of back and forth. So this occurred between Tuesday 3rd and Wednesday 4th of June. Then the Minister of the Interior in Venezuela, he has apparently a television program on a Wednesday night, and he was also at a ceremony, a formal ceremony in Venezuela on Wednesday, and he made additional statements, apparently responding to the comments of Minister Stern, where additional information was then provided, saying basically, how could you dismiss this and claim that it did not occur when in fact, according to them, there are Trinidad and Tobago nationals involved. One was named, and there was a sort of vague reference to that others were involved. All of this claiming to have happened on the Monday. So it's really a very close sequence of activity, allegation, response, uh, counter response. And that's what has been happening. A lot of it in the public day. And to get back to our original point, apparently in the absence of anyone taking the prudent step and engaging in direct diplomacy, which is what we pay our officials of state
So I was
to
gonna
do
ask. That's
all
the
the time.
question. That's the question I want to ask. During your tenure, if something like this were to have transpired, where President Maduro would have made the statements that he made on the Tuesday, what then happens in the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs?
We immediately reach out to our ambassador and team of foreign service officers in Embassy Caracas. And I would tell you, given the proximity to Venezuela and the importance of our collaboration with that country, and if we have the opportunity, I'll speak more about that. The importance to our interests of maintaining that collaboration, particularly in the Gulf of Paria, I would have been speaking in person to the ambassador of Venezuela on Wednesday for the latest. We are now on Sunday night, and I can tell you that conversation has not occurred between the minister or parliamentary secretary or official, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, or from the office of the Prime Minister, if you want to take it to that extent, and counterpart authority in Venezuela.
So we haven't yet reached out to our counterparts in Venezuela to discuss this issue?
Or to request information. And I want to say, this is not the first time there's been an allegation or claim that a national of Trinidad and Tobago has been detained in a foreign country. So
stick a pin. I don't want
that's
you to.
Part of our job.
I don't want you to get to that yet, because that's actually a question that I have lined up here. So this happens on Tuesday, as in it becomes national knowledge or international knowledge on Tuesday. Your ministry's first steps would be to make contact with their counterparts. When you get information, what do you then do?
When we get information, we would then engage in some degree of analysis and verification. We are now in a position to reach out to our local authorities, the Ministry of National Security, the Immigration Division. I guess now you have Ministry of Homeland Security, Ministry of Defense, the Coast Guard, etc. You have requested in a formal sense, in a face-to-face meeting, by a diplomatic note, the details, and you are then able to take the prudent action that would be indicated by the provision of those details. In the absence of that, to simply engage in counter rhetoric, which some people are cheering on, and that's their right to do. Is Trinidad and Tobago any better today than it was last week Tuesday on this matter? I would say not. Do we have any further clarity or information today than we had then? I would say not. And what about our interests that are engaged in the common space? Right as we speak tonight, there are commercial marine activities taking place. There are fisheries activities taking place day and night on an ongoing basis. If tomorrow one of our fishermen has an engine breakdown, it happens basically every week, every month. And a search and rescue operation has to be engaged. Guess who some of the first counterparts we will be communicating with? The commander of the Coast Guard will be communicating with. So again, I don't want to belabor that point, but I want to really emphasize that this collaboration has nothing to do with political solidarity or shared ideology, because there's very little of that. It has to do with the interests of our country and the prudent and responsible foreign policy position that Trinidad and Tobago has maintained since our independence.
So it's not the first time we would have nationals of Trinidad and Tobago be involved in activities in other countries that might be deemed criminal. What has happened in the past when those things have taken place?
We do the prudent diplomatic and consular outreach engagement. We request and receive additional detailed identification. Well, if these are, as claimed, mercenaries of some type of illegal entrance, it's unlikely they will have personal identification documents. But we request as much detail, coordinates where the entry was claimed to have occurred, and all of the other components, the granular components that would allow Trinidad and Tobago to make informed commentary, to engage in informed investigation of a matter beyond just general rhetoric at a media conference. I was an ambassador in Brazil, accredited to several other countries in Southern Cone, and on many occasions we would have had to do jail visits, visits to detention centers, when nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, for various reasons, found themselves detained by the Brazilian authorities. And that's just part of our duty. Now, we won't be able to do that if we are getting a different direction from headquarters. And it appears, based on comments made by the Prime Minister, that is not the direction that Trinidad and Tobago has seen fit to engage in this particular occasion.
But
and here we are.
In you compiling your timeline, have you discovered any statements coming from President Maduro or any senior ranking member of the Venezuelan government that comes across as a threat having been issued to Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I would request that all government officials who have been saying that they have received the threat, that they provide those details to the national public, because we are stakeholders in this matter and we deserve to know exactly what threat they are responding to. I have yet to discover any such threat having been made, but it's possible they may have received or seen or detected something that has not yet been shared with the public. I can say categorically that based on the media reports, etc., at best there was an inference on our part or some kind of assumption that, and it was not to my review President Maduro, but a minister in the Venezuelan cabinet would have made a comment about pursuing justice with respect to incursions into their country. I would be surprised if comments along those lines would not be made by any country claiming to have sustained some sort of inclusion. So whether or not it will be productive to put our energy, the energy of the office of the Prime Minister, the energy of a post-cabinet media conference, and point the national attention of Trinidad and Tobago to a rhetorical response to a comment not made by the president of another country. Is that the wisest course for Trinidad? You would note that our government officials have gone silent over the weekend on this matter. You would have noted that. But some former officials were reachable by the media, including, tellingly, former Minister of Foreign Affairs Winston Ducaran, who worked under Kamela Prasad's successor in the 2010 to 2015 period. During that period, he did serve as Minister of Foreign and Caribbean Affairs for some time. And he also took issue and had a divergent position. Some of the comments were saying this is not the best way to treat this matter like these. We appear to have abandoned our foreign policy. We appear to have abandoned our reliance on diplomacy and the dialogue to resolve conflict or disputes or controversy, and instead have adopted a very different stance, uh, more akin to demagoguery, rhetoric, megaphone engagement, almost taunting at times, which cannot be prudent for a small developing nation and is inconsistent with the traditional foreign policy stance of Trinidad across generations since our independence.
Well, one of the things that occurred to me on the weekend, I wondered if with the change of government, if there was a possibility that we didn't actually have senior people on the ground in Caracas, as in an ambassador.
Well, au contraire.
Oh, we do have an ambassador on the ground in Venezuela?
Yes. Well, we have had an ambassador up and subsequent to the general election in Trinidad and Tobago, but he's not there alone. I know he's probably in the process of making a transition back to capital. I don't have the details.
Right.
But we also have excellent and experienced foreign service staff at headquarters here in Port-au-Prince and in Caracas as well. The question is, have we been utilizing the servants of the country? Have we been communicating with them? Have we given them the relevant direction that would allow them to do the work that the taxpayer paying them to do? That does not appear to be the case. I'm not here to hope for the worst. I'm here to hope for the best. And it is my hope and plea to the government of the day. It's not too late to change course, and it's not too late to take more responsible and prudent action in this and other matters that will arise as we engage in our nation.
Dr. Browne, one of the statements that the Prime Minister made during her press conference responses last week was that she was likely to align herself with the United States. That leapt out at me because I'm aware that in the past, Trinidad and Tobago has been very, very, very circumspect about aligning itself with any country at all on matters of dispute. So what does aligning aligning the country with the United States mean for us?
Well, that really was a very surprising phraseology by the Prime Minister. You're kind in your recollection, because what she actually said was, and I quote, "We stand solidly with the American government on issues concerning Venezuela."
Mm-hmm.
That's a very strong blanket statement.
Yep.
That is a brand new presentation of Trinidad and Tobago as a foreign policy statement. It does not specify the nature of the issue the Prime Minister is referring to, and it appears to cover everything that might be the perspective of another government that does not answer to us, and hopefully we do not answer to. So we stand, according to him, solidly with the American government on issues concerning Venezuela. So we are in new territory here. You are right, Trinidad and Tobago has never placed itself in such a position before. Of course, we've always maintained excellent relations with the government of the United States of America. We have done so without sacrificing our independence and sovereignty. We've done so without sacrificing our right to engage and our responsibility to engage with other sovereign states as well, including with states who may not be on uh, the best terms with the United States of America or with China or with the European Union. Uh, we're a sovereign member of the United Nations, and we are all equal under the UN Charter, and therefore to place our foreign policy as in this blanket manner as completely subservient to that of another country. Again, I say it's new territory for Trinidad and Tobago. I am now forced to question our membership in the non-aligned movement, which we entered in the year 1970, and the Prime Minister will be asked to respond to that question. Is Trinidad and Tobago still a member of the non-aligned movement? It's still on their membership route, but statements like these are obviously counter to the principles and philosophy of the non-aligned movement. And even if you go back to the founding fathers of CARICOM and persons like Errol Barrow, who famously said, as small states, we are called upon to be friends of all and satellites of none. So this is not me, as the last person in our national state to be preaching anything akin to anti-Americanism, anti-Chinaism, anti-Europeanism, because that's counter to our foreign policy. And one of the things we've been proud of is the stability of our foreign policy, notwithstanding changes in administration. So maybe the texture may vary, maybe the minutiae or the specific stance on a particular development might vary, but the overall non-aligned disposition of Trinidad and Tobago, and frankly, the rest of the Caribbean community, has never really been drawn into question the way it has been this week. So
I'm glad you raised that, because my final question to you was going to be, what are you seeing right now? Because I mean, this issue looks like it has legs, like it has further to go. But within the frame of last week, Tuesday to now, the implications of our response on this, because there have been headlines all over the world about us heating up relations between Venezuela. So what are you seeing as our local, regional, and possibly international outcome thus far?
Well, it all depends on what happens this week. My understanding is there's likely to be a meeting at the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. I said it should have taken place last week. And let's see what happens during the course of this week. Let's see if tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock there is a meeting involving finally the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM. Let's see if that happens. I hope it does, and that space is used productively to do what we are in this service engaged in, which is to solve problems, to reduce tension, and to foster healthy and productive relations. In the absence of that, we've seen where these controversies can go. We've seen that it can constitute a threat to the Caribbean Sea, remaining a zone of peace. We are aware that we have ongoing energy interests. Dragon wasn't the end of it. We have ongoing important energy interests with Venezuela, and the government is fully aware of that. So it is in their interest, it is in our interest as citizens, that notwithstanding who wants to cheerlead for what political camp, that this matter be resolved quickly and prudently and responsibly, and we can continue the business of good neighborly conduct and prudent economic relations. That grand focus between our two countries sees the transit of dozens of vessels a week. Every vehicle on the road in Trinidad and Tobago passes very close to that border on a commercial vessel. Much of our fishing resources, or shrimp, much of our energy interest platforms that exist, we have individuals working in countries along that coast. Everything tells us that we have to maintain a more prudent course in our domestic and foreign.
Dr. Browne, do you think we're going to be used as a pawn in some sort of geopolitical conflict between the United States and Venezuela?
We should not. Trinidad and Tobago has actually been a force for good in these matters. You would recall when the Declaration of Guyana was being formulated and worked on, Trinidad and Tobago was in that little room in the airport in Dominica, working alongside Ralph Gonsalves, was Prime Minister Keith Browne, and the team from Trinidad and Tobago, including your humble servant. Not pouring kerosene on the flames, but taking a very responsible line. And if you look at how that declaration is structured, it is all about reducing tension. It is all about building in mechanisms to ensure that nothing occurs that can trigger a downward spiral or cycle that can lead to potential conflict or negative outcome. Seeing that as in the interest of CARICOM and of course in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. That was with respect to an ongoing controversy between Guyana and Venezuela. There are other controversies in this region. There's a border controversy between Belize and Guatemala. Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM have been prudently and wisely involved in that. Again, not rabble-rousing, but seeking to calm troubled waters, relying on facts, relying on formal and quiet channels of diplomacy and engagement, and all the tools available to a state beyond holding up a megaphone and shouting, using very informal terminology at the leadership of any other country. That's not the conduct of this army.
Dr. Browne, I will wrap it up there. I know that you have an internal elections campaign that you need to go and work on. You have energies that need to be poured in that direction. So thank you so much for your time this evening and all the best in your internal bid.
Thank you very much. Continue the good work that you do, and a pleasant evening and God's blessing to all.
All right. Thank you very much. Oh, give my regards to Sarah and the children.
I will.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, folks. So that was Senator Dr. Amery Browne, former Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, joining us to talk about the diplomatic issues that we're dealing with right now. So let me shout out and hail some people. Gavin, Val, Melissa, Joyce, Joyda, who else there, boy? Pearl Dowlat, Melissa Matthews, Natasha, Ram Sankar, Cheryl Bailey, Ray, Veroncia. So now I want to talk about the week in Bacchanal. Now, everybody week in the start, like either Sunday or Monday, right? Depending on how you look at the week. But it appears now as if our week the start on a Thursday evening. But let me see, where am I? All right, folks. So, first thing I want to do in this segment of the program is give a shout out to this profile. I want those of you that are into insightful commentary to go and visit this fella page. I started noticing his posts during the general election. He would do a nice wrap-up, a nice synopsis of things, And then since the general election, he has been following the activities of the sitting government and doing some very, very, very insightful analysis. And I feel like the page is worthy, page or profile, whatever whether it's a page or profile. Leon Silvers deserves some support. So they go and show either the page or the profile some love, please. Hit him a follow or hit him a like or whatever it is you have to do. But show him some love, because the work that he has been doing is some really good work. Hey, look Leon on the broadcast, boy. Leon, boy, big up yourself. Big up your whole self, because your posts have been giving me life, right? Life. There are days when I get up and I ain't feeling like posting because there's just too much going on. I go into my inbox and I get exhausted from the number of messages coming into my inbox from various people for different ministries and different areas and all the problems that are taking place. And then I'll say, you know what? Let me go and see what Leon posts today, just to kind of give myself some vibes and things. So, Leon, here's to you. Good work. Very good work. And I couldn't not be seeing good work like that and not hail it out, not, salute it. Good work. Yes, he on the live. The man on the live. All right. You know how people think I is Leon? Will you believe that? They thought I and Leon is the same person. No, 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 no. Two different people. I am me. Leon is him. I guess it's the same way people think I is UNC Cabal and UNC Cabal is me. And, I am however many different personas. No, all of these people are separate and distinct people. I am not everybody. I am not Legion. I am not every single profile on social media that you don't like. No, right? So Leon is a whole person. A whole person. All right, where am I now? Oh my goodness, I've gotten so lost. Right. So, where that wrong thing. So today I want to look at Mousy and all the set of problems that she causing for us, right? Non-stop problems. It's like Mousy gets sworn into office and she decide, I don't want peace. I only want problems. Because we are only 5 weeks into her term in government, which means we have 58 months and 3 weeks to go in her term in office. Remember, we don't count it in years, we count it in months. So 1 month and a week down, so it means 58 months, 3 weeks to go with Kamela Prasad Bissessa, right? With Mousy and the Mousketeers. So first thing I want to talk about is her, let me say this properly, the way in which Kamela Prasad Bissessa seems to be setting this country up for young people, especially young black people from working class backgrounds, to fail. I don't know how many of you all remember Kamela used to be the Minister of Education. And when she was Minister of Education back in the 1990s, it is under her that we went from common entrance to SEA. And SEA gave secondary school placements to all students. Not something that I had an issue with. I would say, as an educator, if there is an issue to be had, is that we don't necessarily take into consideration in our overall education system that we have children with different levels of cognitive skills and different ways of learning, and our formal education system does not yet properly, adequately take into consideration all of the needs. I'm not saying that we are not trying. I am saying that we are not yet at the place that I think we can be and ought to be. Give me a second. Leon is not tech guy. Oh my God. Tech guy is a separate person. I am not tech guy either. The people who think I'm tech guy. No, I'm not tech guy. And I will never let you all know who tech guy is. We must protect tech guy at all costs. So, getting back to the conversation. Kamela, as Minister of Education, also put an end to corporal punishment in schools. I remember when it happened, it wasn't something that I had a problem with either, because I felt that corporal punishment was a fallback from the colonial era, because we like to think that the only way to control people, to police people, to get people to do the things that need to be done is through physical force. And the thing is, we always tend to think that some people don't deserve physical force and other people do. And I'm not going to pretty things up anymore. We like to think that black people is who deserve licks all the time. Black people deserve punishment. Black people actually have to be punished in order for them to do anything. That's how we think. That's part of our colonial mindset. And this government is tapping into that. This government is currently tapping into the idea we have that only poor black children are involved and engaged in violent behavior, and so they need to be treated like criminals. All of that was there in the messaging on Thursday at that meeting. And I've worked in secondary schools. I've told you all this. I've worked in secondary schools that treat with mostly working class. Some middle class, some lower middle class, maybe a handful of upper middle class, or maybe middle class, or middle income homes, but mostly low income homes where there's a need for support systems, there's a need for grants, there's a need for the services that schools provide, the services that the Ministry of Social Development provides. Serious, severe need. In homes like that, you are likely to find a range of children. Not all children are going to be violent coming from those homes. And you're also not going to find that all well-behaved, well-adjusted children come only from two-parent homes. There are a range of issues that affect children on a daily basis. So when you come in a press conference and you talk about student violence in a particular way, and this is minors we're talking about, right? Under 18. So these aren't adults. We are talking about minors, young adults, because some of them might be, on the cusp of turning 18 and becoming adults. When you have decided that your government's policy, rather, I should say, has decided that we're going to be treating minors who are showing dysfunctional behavior as criminals. Because that's some of the language used in our press conference. She talked about crime, and if they're doing the crime and criminal acts. Minors, children whose brain, cognitive functioning, synapses have not been thoroughly formed. Children who are dealing up with hormonal changes. Children who are likely to be coming from a range of backgrounds. Some functional, some dysfunctional. Children who are going through all kinds of changes in their lives. Children who might be coping with and dealing with their own traumas, their own abuses, their own struggles and challenges. And so we know you will act out. And you will act out in a range of ways. And we have decided that what we're going to be doing, or rather, Kamela and her government has decided that what we're going to do is punish these children. So retributive justice, not restorative justice. Now, I live in a country where I around people all the time who always like to compare us here in Trinidad and Tobago to foreign countries. Always talking about why we can't be like this foreign country or that foreign country. Now, in some instances, they talk about the United States. In other instances, we will talk about why we can't be like Europe, the UK, Canada. Europe, the UK, and Canada, those countries don't practice retributive justice. They focus on restorative justice, rehabilitative justice, mediation, getting children involved in activities that will help them to learn and behave in a more functional fashion. If we decide that the first time a child gets into a fight in school, they're going to be expelled. The first time, right? Very first instant that a child gets into a fight in school, the child is going to be expelled. What do we think is going to happen to that child? Because expulsion brings with it stigma, right? So that it might be problematic for that child to get into school, a government school. That's what I mean, right? Public education. So if the child can't get into a public school, then the parents have to find money to send that child to a private school. If it's a situation where the parents don't have that money, what then happens? Does the child then fall through the cracks? Does the child then end up in a situation where the child may actually end up in further delinquent behavior and then eventually become more involved in criminal activity? So here we have Kamela Prasad Bissessa, the person who put an end to corporal punishment and didn't put systems in place in schools back then for how to evolve and cope with disciplining children in a new approach, in a new era. New policies were put in place subsequent to Kamela when Ms. Hazel Manning became the Minister of Education, because she started a Selfesteem program. It's one of the things that I remembered from her era of being a Minister of Education, and that Selfesteem program had social workers in limited numbers and guidance counselors at that point in time in limited numbers, wasn't large numbers, right? Coming into schools and doing sessions with students to get them to build their self-esteem. It was meant to get the students, the children, to start talking about their feelings, expressing their feelings, and finding ways to be able to talk out the issues that they were dealing with. So there was a lot of mediation involved in that program then. Then eventually, because at that point in time, I'm fully in the secondary education system. Eventually, there was a larger intake of social workers within the Ministry of Education and guidance counselors. Now, and as Leon Silver's, his post, or either Friday or Saturday, that made me do a deep dive. So I went to look at the policy that they have with respect to disciplines in schools. And around the time I went to look at that policy, this message came into my inbox from somebody who works with school supervisors. And the person said, this pertains to the Student Support Services Division, SSSD. Contracts of school social workers have been coming to an end and contracts are not being renewed. Persons would have applied for positions within SSSD. Some were even interviewed and nothing has come out of those interviews. Persons are worried that there has been no communication forthcoming from the HR unit or the SSSD manager. So, 5 weeks into Kamela's term in office, this most recent term in office, school social workers, student support services are already facing cuts and non-renewal of contracts. And this Prime Minister stands up in a meeting last week Thursday and talks about student behavior, student discipline and indiscipline. And her immediate position is, if the students fight from the first fight, they're going to be expelled. Now, the first line of mediation in these schools will be the teacher, the guidance counselors, and the social workers at the schools. And in many instances, you have one social worker for 4 different schools. So that caseload is a heavy caseload for that social worker. If we are not paying social workers, if we are not renewing their contracts, who's providing these services for students at the schools? Who's providing support for the guidance counselors? Does it mean that we are undermining the services that we have put in place to help students manage their emotions, to help students manage their behavior? So how do you, in one breath, take away these services and then in the next breath say, if they fight, we expelling them? Is it a situation where this sitting government has decided that what it wants to do is criminalize working class children? That's the first thing that popped into my mind. Is it that we have decided that what we're going to do is leave these vulnerable students who are coming from working class backgrounds, who are coming from homes where there might be dysfunction, who are coming from conditions that are difficult for them to manage, and we're not going to provide any support? None whatsoever. And then when things happen, we treat them like criminals? What does that mean for the future of this space? So this social worker had that to say. So I went and I looked at the strategies for dealing with school indiscipline. And there is a whole national school discipline matrix. The document is 43 pages long. And I would love if you all would go and take a look at the document. Because what the document has established is that the Ministry of Education has a plan. At least the former version of the Ministry of Education had a plan for how it was going to treat with student indiscipline. And it was a plan that involved various steps, various levels of seriousness, right? So multiple incursions, the use of teachers, the use of school supervisors, guidance counselors, and then eventually involving the TTPS. So let's take a look at, I just want to take a look at, I'm going to make this big. Right. So this is how it goes. And I'm zooming in and then I'm zooming out. Student misbehavior, right? If reported observed, you first go to the teacher or administrator. Then, if there is a lapse, you then go to the principal or the dean. And when they say lapse, they mean if there's a long time between the first infraction and other infractions, right? You can make reports to the principal or the dean. Possible involvement of parents, social workers, student support services, law enforcement, MSDFS. I guess that would be is that Defense Force? I think so. Out of school suspension is not recommended. Then, let's now move this a little higher up. Whoops. Where are we? Right. Let me, give me a second. If it's the student's second or third offense, you have out of school suspension, possible expulsion if behavior does not improve, referral to the police, MSDFS, CA, I think that's CA, boy, I'm not sure, and then MILAT. So of course, if there's persistent and continuous infractions, one of the things that I noted in our press conference is after Kamela made the comment about criminal behavior and expulsion and police and whatever, she was pulled aside by one of her ministers who pointed out to her that you still have the MILAT route and a couple other things. So I imagine it was stuff from this matrix that the person was reminding her of. I'm seeing that, I'm seeing a therapist reminding me that Ministry of Social, right, MSD is Ministry of Social Development. Thank you so much. So this part of the document, and like I said, the document is 43 pages long. I just showing only a couple pages. You have the various levels of offenses, right? Dress code, excessive tardiness, class truancy. So at that level, first offense, teacher. Second offense, parent conference, detention for 1 or 2 days. Third offense, parent conference, 3 to 5 days of suspension, escalation to major level if continued. Then these are some of the other offenses. And again, this is just for you to see that it is not that the Ministry of Education doesn't have things in mind. So you're seeing assault, bullying, cyberbullying, fighting without a weapon, forgery, gambling, lewd or inappropriate behavior, tobacco, vaping. All of this for you to see that the ministry has policies in place. Of course, the question has to be, how are these policies being implemented? Like how effectively or how efficiently? Now, if they're not being implemented effectively and efficiently, you can't blame the children. You can't blame the children who are misbehaving if the policies that are there in place to treat with their indiscipline is not being utilized effectively. You have to continue to provide support for these children. And one of the things that they're entitled to is public education. You understand? It's one of the things that is there enshrined. All citizens in the country, once you're born here and you're a citizen here, you are entitled to public education. The same way entitled to public health care. People paying taxes for that. So for Kamela to get up in a press conference and suggest that moving forward, the minute a child is engaged in violence at schools, the child has to be expelled. That's crazy. That doesn't solve our indiscipline problems. It creates an indiscipline problem. And you had to ask yourself, was it thinking behind this new policy? What is Kamela seeking to achieve? What is she hoping will be the outcome? Because I am not seeing a decline in violence in schools from that new policy. That's not what I'm seeing. Because if you want to see a decline of violence in schools, you have to treat with the root cause of the violence, which has a lot to do with children's emotions, the trauma that children are dealing with. So if you're not treating with the root causes of violence and you're punishing the act of violence, you're not solving a problem. You're creating a problem. And my concern is, why is Kamela making the decision to create further problems for us with respect to crime and violence in our society? Right? That's my question. What she hoping to achieve with this new policy? And who is this policy appeasing? I also want to hear Michael Dowlatt on this, the Minister of Education, because I notice he is very quiet. He doesn't really speak at the press conferences. You're not hearing a lot about new and young ministers, right? The inexperienced ones. So she comes out, she says a range of things, but I'm not hearing her policymakers speak on these issues. Tony Jaimongo is saying, why don't you talk about the parents of these children who have no behavior? Let's give Tony 2 minutes of our time. Tony, dear Tony, the reason the parents of these children are lacking in behavior is that they too have issues that they need to work out. It is that they too probably have traumatic experiences that they have never healed from. It is that they too probably have never learned coping mechanisms for the problems that they deal with. So, do you know, Tony, that some people, when they have had deep, deep trauma in their lives, they resort to alcohol and drug abuse? So the drug abuse and the alcohol abuse has nothing to do with them just wanting to consume alcohol and drugs. It is that they're using drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism for the pain that they're dealing with internally. And so, when I meet children at the secondary level that are showing dysfunctional behavior, I'm usually quite clear that the parents themselves have experienced dysfunctional behavior, are dysfunctional adults, and so there's a particular cycle. So what do, Tony Jaimongo? Do you lock up everybody? Or do you begin as a society, as a government that is actually invested in improving a society, do you then start to fund efficiently and effectively counseling and therapy services in the country so that more people can access mental well-being services and begin to treat themselves for all of the trauma that they're dealing with? What do you think, Tony? What would be your approach? Lock up everybody? Expand the maximum security prison? Expand remand yard? Put more people in Carrera? Build an ex-prison? Is that what would be your solution? Because my solution would be to fund mental well-being services. Make counseling more accessible to people. Make therapy more accessible to people. Remove the stigma that people have when it comes to going to counseling and seeking help. That's what my solution would be. I would ensure that the schools have more social workers. I would ensure that the school have more guidance counselors. I would also ensure that adults, so not just the children, the parents of the children, have more access to mental well-being services. That's me, Tony. I know that what I want to do, Tony, is come out and blame the parents and blame the children and say the parents should get locked up, the children should get locked up. And that's fine. After you lock them up, what? What happens, Tony, after you lock them up? Because lock up don't solve the problem. People don't stop being violent because they've been locked up. Children don't stop being violent because they've been expelled. So, Tony, when you are sitting with your friends, or you have a conversation and get past the lockup and get past the expulsion and answer among all yourselves, then what? Right. So I think I could wrap up on this particular issue. I have a question. Was Philip Edward Alexander work? What Philip doing for a living? Anybody know? What Arnold doing for a living? Anybody know? Because to the best of my knowledge, these two men were sworn in as junior ministers in a ministry. Not so? There's not them here with David Lee. How Philip and Anil finding the time when the day come to be attacking people and trolling people on social media? Kamela, because this is a question for Kamela, right? Because she's a boss. She hired them. She gave them portfolios. Was Philip and Anil duties? Where's the job description? Because I know on paper that they are ministers in the Ministry of Housing. And usually, when you are the minister in a ministry, your duties are defined by the substantive line minister. So, when it was finance, when I was, doing work with finance, Brian Manning was a junior minister in finance, and his duties would be assigned to him by the substantive line minister, by Minister Imbut. I think Richie Sukai would have been in Works and Transport at a point in time. So his duties would have been ascribed to him from Rohan Sinanan. What Philip and Anil doing? Is it that they don't have enough to do? When did they come? Is it that we are paying these two men to function as ministers? Or sorry, we're paying them a ministerial salary. But what they're really doing in their time, because they don't seem to have a lot to do, is just sit on social media. Because it kind of comes across like they didn't have much to do. So, Kamela, what are we paying Philip and Anil to do? They're sworn in as ministers. They're getting a minister's salary. Do they have ministerial duties? What are their ministerial duties? It can't be jumping onto social media threads to tell people that they're guilty of treason. So let me show you all some shit that went down on my page today. I put up a post today of from a Venezuelan news site. So people who are on my page, they were going through the posts, they were going through the accounts, the comments. Most of the comments were in Spanish, so they were translated the comments and they were reading the comments. Let me see if I can find the post for you all to see which post it was. So you could go and take a look at it for yourself, right? Give me a second. I'm trying to find it here. Right. So this is the post. And in the post I say, you will note that Maduro has issued no threat to Trinidad and Tobago. Venezuela indicated that terrorists entered their country through Trinidad and Tobago, and Mausi on Thursday ordered our Coast Guard to attack with full force. Kamela is clearly allowing us to become a pawn in a game of American geopolitics. That was my comment on the post. Philip decided to jump on my thread and say this, that I'm coming dangerously close to committing treason, and that I deliberately left out the part where he said they would follow them wherever they are. Where did Maduro say that? I haven't seen any news reports thus far that have said directly that Maduro said that he would follow them wherever they are. And how is that a threat to our country's sovereignty if we are not deemed to be the persons that are involved? So I wasn't clear on what exactly Philip meant here. So I said, let me go and take a look at the Treason Act. So look at the Treason Act. Right, let's read it slowly. Any person owing allegiance to the state who, whether in Trinidad or elsewhere, forms an intention to levy war against the state or to overthrow the government or the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago by force and manifests such intention by an overt act, adheres to enemies of the state by giving them aid or comfort, is guilty of treason. How am I guilty of treason? Who I giving aid or comfort to? Who I trying to overthrow? How am I guilty of treason? So imagine, Philip ain't built a house yet. How many houses a week the UNC promised? A house built yet? They dig any foundation yet? Anybody put up a post yet? It have any wall, a door, a window? Anything put up? Anything built? Not a house has been built yet. No sod turning. Nobody can identify land for a new housing development. There has been no images of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development doing anything at all beyond that picture I showed you just now of David Lee receiving a present, and Philip and Anil like two ass in the picture, just grinning, right? Stand up, skinning and grinning. Nothing of note in 5 weeks has happened in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. But Philip has all the time in the world to be weighing in on national security issues and foreign affairs issues all over the place. And trying to, I don't know, it's not so much threaten, but fearmonger and bully people on my threads to tell them, don't comment, don't say nothing. It's almost like Philip feel he is the commissioner of Facebook. So imagine my shock when I see the former commissioner of Facebook pull up on Philip. So even Gary had to point out that Philip sounded like an activist rather than an authority. So he says, Philip has been appointed a junior minister. One would have hoped he would finally stop making reckless social media commentary. Unfortunately, that has not been the case, and in his latest video, he not only peddled recklessness, but falsehoods as well. So Gary said the man lying, right? Former commissioner of Facebook, former commissioner of police, Gary Griffith, came out and said, Philip is being intemperate and he is peddling falsehoods. Let's look at another excerpt. Philip Alexander's comments are not only ignorant, lacking a basic understanding in such affairs, they are dangerous. Beyond that, it is disrespectful to the actual ministers of defense, foreign affairs, and homeland security, and even the Prime Minister herself, since statements from the government should be coming from these offices, not a junior minister of housing. I couldn't say it better myself. So I'm going to close off this particular part of the live by asking Kamela again, what is Philip's job? We saw him get sworn in as a minister. We know that he's a senator, so we know that you have him in the parliament. We know that he's a junior minister in the Ministry of Housing. But what exactly are his duties and responsibilities? How does he and Anil have the time to be on social media every day, spreading falsehoods, misleading the public, while collecting a salary from the treasury? Because I want people to understand that Philip and Anil are on social media daily, saying all kinds of atrocious things, misleading the public, saying some very distasteful things, putting their mouth in things that have nothing to do with them, and getting a salary from the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago every month. Just putting that out there. So Kamela, when you get a chance, let us know. What's the job description? What are the duties? Because these men running roughshod, trampling on the very citizens that you claim you are representing and protecting. So, what's going on? What really going on? Whew. Right. I was planning to talk about political things, but hear me, political things, foreign affairs things, but we've already covered all of the things that I want to cover with respect to foreign affairs with the interview with Dr. Browne. The last foreign affairs thing that I'm going to talk on is this. I need help. Can you all help me find this guy? He's been missing. He's been missing since last week. He's been missing a good 4 days now. Easily 4 days. Last time I saw him might have been when Roosevelt Scarrett, was it? Or Gaston Browne. Last time I saw him was when Gaston Browne told him to sit down and shut up. And I haven't seen him since then. And there's this whole issue between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. And he should be the person we're seeing. He should be the person who is speaking. But he isn't. And I don't know. Why is he not speaking? Where is he? Is he absent without leave? Is he missing in action? Should we get Hunter Search and Rescue to go and look for him? Where on earth is this guy? There's a whole minister that we can't find, you know. And this is the minister that should be in the spotlight right now, chairing meetings and bringing accountability to the public. So this might be funny. And I mean, I want it to be a little bit satirical and lighthearted. But this is yet another person that we are paying a salary to, and we're not getting value for money. This man has not shown up to be held accountable for whatever is going on right now. No explanations, no policy, no discussing how our current actions fit in with our foreign policy guidelines, which are there on the Ministry of Foreign Policy's Foreign Affairs website. If you go to look for our foreign policy, you see it there on the website, and it tells you precisely what our stance is on diplomacy. And we can't find this fella. So I think that maybe we need to send police out to look for him. Maybe he on a boat drifting over into Venezuelan waters. So maybe the Coast Guard need to find him before the Guardia Nacional does. But here is a man making almost $48,000 a month, because I think the salary is about 47 and change, right? So about $48,000 a month. And we can't find this man to explain to us what's really going on with this whole scenario between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. Nothing at all. So if you see him, if you find him, alert me, please. Send me a message, tag me, let me know Rhoda we find him. Right? Thank you so much. It's important. I'm worried. I'm concerned for him. He could be cold. He could be lost in the highways and byways. He could be wandering a road somewhere. Right? For all we know, the man kidnapped. And he ransom us, don't even know who to call. So, help me find Sean Sobers, please. He important, right? He might be important to you, but he important to me. Help me find Sean. And, right, I don't want nobody say that is only Kamela and them are talking about.
People that underestimate humility. People that underestimate when people listening. Now it's time to listen. The people say we wasn't listening. I not running down every car that pass. And nobody ain't rushing me to talk before I ready to talk.
Right. So I need to address a couple things. There have been people on my threads, big mad this week because they find, well, Rhoda, we ain't hearing from the opposition leader and you ain't saying nothing. Couple things. I am not the PNM's social media officer. I am not the PNM's public relations officer. I don't work in the office of the opposition leader, and I am mindful that the PNM has an internals coming up. So, you would have noticed that I have said very little about PNM and PNM related things since my last live, because I didn't want anybody coming to say that Rhoda is making any comments or that news source is making any comments to swing people's opinion or to sway people's opinion with respect to the PNM internals. I'm very careful and very mindful of the impact and influence that I can have on things like elections because I talk about current affairs. That being said, I have noted, like the rest of the public, that the new opposition leader has a different way of doing things. She is more reticent. She does not speak as quickly as past political leaders or opposition leaders have, because Dr. Rowley had his style, and it was, from very many people, an effective style. I liked his style. I will say this. Based on what Ms. Bacchs Robinson said in that video clip, and I'm going to play it again, she needs to adapt her style of response to the people she is representing. And the people she is representing may not just be people who support the People's National Movement. That's important, because there are many people, over 100,000 people, who didn't vote in this election. I don't know, I can't say whether that entire 100,000 was all PNM. What I will say is, in 2020, they voted the PNM. Right? They may not necessarily be PNM supporters, but they voted the PNM in 2020. They didn't vote in this 2025 election. They didn't vote for the UNC, and they chose not to vote. And if they didn't vote for the UNC, it means that Kamela was not an option for them. If they didn't vote for the PNM, it means that what the PNM put on offer for the general elections that just happened was not appealing to them. So it means that Ms. Bacchs Robinson has the opportunity to become appealing to to those 100,000 people that couldn't find it in their heart or index finger to vote. And the feedback that I have been seeing all over social media is that they want an opposition leader who is more responsive. So I want to go back to the clip, and then we go in, and then I'm going to finish up my thoughts, right?
People that underestimate humility. People that underestimate when people listening. Now it's time to listen. The people say we wasn't listening. I not running down every car that pass. And nobody ain't rushing me to talk before I ready to talk.
I can be entirely on board with not chasing every car that passes, because there are days when something will happen and people want me to do a live one time. And in my mind, I'll be like, no, this issue had to cook some more. This issue had to build some more. More things had to happen. And then I'm going to weigh in on it. So I can understand that. I can appreciate that as a strategy, because sometimes that is important and necessary. I can understand the position of I am listening before I respond. Part of the I am listening before I respond, though, is this. People are already talking. People are already saying to you, they want you to respond. And they're letting you know the areas that they want you to respond on. And I feel it is important for the opposition leader and soon to be political leader of the PNM to have a team that discerns when and how you're going to respond. I've noticed that one of the approaches to response right now is to kind of delegate. That needs to be made clearer to your public. It needs to be made clearer to your support base that what you are doing as opposition leader is delegating. So when this foreign affairs thing happened, Dr. Browne was the person who responded on behalf of the opposition the Thursday night. Friday and Saturday, I see people left, right, and center. Oh, we ain't see nothing from the opposition. We ain't see nothing from the opposition. So I would have posted the Newsday story that covered Dr. Browne's statements. But I feel if we're having a situation where Dr. Browne is responding on behalf of the opposition, then the opposition leader has to post the response. Because we have grown accustomed, your audience has grown accustomed to finding things on specific site and place pages. So opposition leader needs a page, not the page that Kamela had, a new page that focuses on Ms. Bacchs Robinson. And the PNM pages, the traditional PNM pages, whether it's the YouTube channel or the Facebook page, needs to be supportive of the current opposition leader. Because I asked a question today and nobody could have answered. I asked in offline channels, does Penny's team have access, like credentials, login, username, password, to PNM's YouTube channel and PNM's Facebook pages? If her team doesn't have access to those pages, then she can't post to those pages, or her team can't post to those pages. It then means that the current opposition leader is forced to have to build whole new pages, a whole new social media presence, and then get the PNM audience that has been focused on those pages to then move over to new channels and new accounts. That takes a lot of work. That handicaps a person. And so, while I am ready and willing to grant a certain amount of grace and leeway to the opposition leader needs to understand that there is a support base that is hungry for information and hungry for guidance. So there are a bunch of things that need to happen in quick time. If the previous owners of those PNM pages are not giving you access to those pages and those channels, set up new pages and channels. Let people know so that they can start heading towards those channels to get information. If it means that you have to create a whole new presence, create a whole new presence. But we cannot continue to have gaps in information and vacuums. I want to hope that people inside the PNM are supportive of the new opposition leader, because it is only supporting the new opposition leader that is going to put the party and people who want representation from the PNM on a strong footing with the madness that is taking place currently with this government. That's my 2 cents. Right? So everybody who was jumping on my page and complaining about, oh, you ain't had nothing to say and you ain't had nothing to say. Listen, I understand when I open my mouth on an issue, the impact it does have. Since our last live, when I point out the leak of the proclamation, man can't say a word yet. Crickets. Silence. Y'all feel I don't understand the responsibility I bear? I understand it. I had to be careful with it. Right? So, you know, go easy on. Give grace, right, to the opposition leader. But I also think that the opposition leader needs to be mindful that there has to be more momentum and more dynamism in some of the communication approaches. Nobody's saying chase every car tire, but there are some vehicles that you have to stop and explain to the population why this vehicle is a dangerous vehicle. All right? So, folks, yes, correct, Leon, there is a Penny Bacchs page, but so here's the challenge. I don't think that mentally a lot of people have made this shift to, when something happens, go directly to the Penny Bacchs page. And it's all about making sure that the information is out there, or that we reiterate this for people. Something happens, go to the Penny Bacchs page. Something happens, go to this page. When the meeting, the launch that she had on Saturday night, I think, when that happened, I went to the PNM YouTube page. Found nothing at all. So this morning, I went on my feisty self and telling certain people, well, I couldn't find the page last night, blah, blah, blah. Listen, homeboy, send the Facebook link one time and give me one set of talk about how I not logical enough. Listen, I was up in my feels, but it didn't automatically occur to me to go to her page. And all I'm saying is, if it didn't automatically occur to me, there might be a couple other people that it didn't automatically occur to. I think there's a press conference tomorrow morning from the opposition. I know now to check the Penny Bacchs page, but I'm thinking that eventually they have to move to an opposition leader page, as well as utilizing all of the PNM pages and channels, because there is a captive audience on those pages and channels. That's all I say. You're laughing at me. It's a real rinse out thing with you know. So it had somebody on the feed. I want to give him a little 2 seconds of fame. Let me see if I could find him back. Because listen, all it does is a real comment up a storm on this thing, you know. Some idiot making a set of stupid comments about the 29th. When boy, God, look how far back I had to scroll. So it has some idiot named Den come. Right, look him here. Oh God, I find it and then it disappear because right, so he missed the whole live. he missed the April the 29th live. He missed the whole April 29th live. That live mashed up the country. When I finished that live, so you couldn't hear nothing. It was silence. Echoes. I was in an echo chamber for a good couple days. Then come you miss that, boy? It all over the hot YouTube. Right? So if you're looking for it, it all over the hot YouTube. You ain't serious. You just want to come and push talk. You sound like you's a yellow is the code troll. Right? So let me ban you from a broadcast. Alright, Olia, enjoy the rest of the evening. It was nice. It was lovely. And I guess maybe next weekend. I ain't sure, but all I know, as soon as I'm going to do a live, I'll give Olia the shout, right? Olia get a notification. Take care and thank you so much.